the accuracy of data. Yeah, you're recording according to my computer.
Okay, go ahead. All right, so we're going to talk about Gobekli Tepe. What'd you?
Yeah, the German scientist who began the excavation has died, and it's been taken over by the mainstream archaeologists, and they're running to a theme, an explanation that's Egyptian style archaeology. And if you look at their artwork and that goes with these sites, it's all assumptionized in terms of their things. So when they're publishing their data, I'm sure they're collecting the records accurately. However, when they publish it, it's been sanitized to make sure their story and their view about what this site represents and all the rest of it is going to play their gravy train pay structures.
Like the whole death cult and selling it as a site of mummies and mysterious antiquity.
The problem with the site is that how old it was got out before these guys could get in there and force the story to be less than 4,500 BC, so that all their Egyptian statements lined up. And of course, their narrative failed, I suppose, on that. But these guys aren't giving up. The archaeological discoveries in America are affected by the native Indian acts to involve those artifacts that get reburied because they're native Indians. So they've got all this stuff that they want to obfuscate over and hide and not have any evidence thereof to keep their religious or their cultural belief system and storyline and their history working the way they want it to. So in North America, nobody knows really what the Clovis culture could do. And if you're going to see objects that are out of place in the terms of copper objects or art objects and all the rest of it, that challenge the idea of that we're all in the Stone Age 10,000 years ago with our rocks and clubs, and we're really well advanced now with our nuclear weapons some 12,000 years later. They're going to try and control that narrative until Atlantis rises above the waves or wherever and just proves that the story is completely wrong. So you've got statements about the stuff that's been found in the Egyptian temples about, this was a lotus flower, when clearly anybody with understanding about other sorts of engineering would claim, no, you can build a light that looks exactly like that. And they don't want to acknowledge what's written in the rock. They mistranslate, they deliberately lie about it. You got to ask yourself the question, why are they doing this? And there's a reason for it, and it's to promote the idea that the world needs to move from rocks, clubs, and isolated.
My opinion, 9 out of 10 times, it's about money, and the other 1 out of 10 times, it's about the ideas that lead to money, or somebody getting money and you not getting money. So that's my personal take on that.
But it's also about total control over the global culture.
Of course.
That's the real agenda.
I think we're all in agreement on that.
So they lie about it. In terms of the programs that we're talking about, I think we need to be really selective and careful in terms of looking at specific we're working on. There's a lot of stuff that we could go back and look at and explain in a much more structured way. The issues I have with experiments in electrodynamics, the understanding of relational or mechanics in motion systems and physics, a proper understanding of atomic models and chemistry and things. And when we get into the social stuff, we need to do the same thing. We need to give people a good grounding in the development of philosophies of East and West, of all of them.
I could agree with that, yeah.
And I would
Well,
suggest,
I'm sure
yeah,
that we'll come up with all sorts of ideas by the time it actually happens. I don't want to, jinx it or whatever. So we'll keep it mum, and so the good news, so that the audience doesn't yet know what it is, but it is really good news. I want to go back to talking about Gobekli Tepe. Can you guys see my share screen or no?
yeah, I can see it.
Okay, very good. So this paper that I'm responding to was, again, came to my attention from the Ancient Architects channel. I'll put a link to his video in the description. And I thought his video was interesting, but as usual, I think Matt is missing like really important, obvious information. He's aware of the Saturn theory because I told him about it, and he says, "Yeah, people keep telling me I got to look into it. I need to spend some time on it." I'm like, "Yeah," and so that was 3 or 4 years ago. He received my emails, the ones that go to Graham Hancock and to Walt Thornhill and Randall Carlson. I put out these emails, and sometimes I include. 1 second, guys. Can you hear me? Mm-hmm.
It's gone quiet.
Yeah, I mean, he's quite a thorough sort of bloke, to be honest. But he says that he changes his opinions with just about every new bit of information that comes in. I think he's one of these. He's one of these who has to go with the mainstream science view at all costs, and that's why he seems to flip his opinion on things a lot.
Sorry about that. I received a call in the middle of the. I don't even know where my sentence was when that call started coming through.
You were talking about ancient architects, I think.
Oh yeah. So I really like Matt, and I've tried to tell him about stuff, and I include him in a lot of emails, but he doesn't really like take the time to interpret all the data. He's always looking at it through certain, I don't know, like controlled opposition alt stream views, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it seems that way to me.
And he doesn't have a strong engineering background, so he doesn't really understand Chris Dunn's theory. And he is too easy to buy into the water pump theory, even though it makes really no sense from a planning project manager standpoint, right? You don't need something that's that large to pump water around when you can use canals. So there's
he's back of the opinion that it's a tomb, the Great Pyramid.
He's gone around circles because he's missed the obvious boat to get on. And that's his problem. But at least following him always yields really good news and information. So this one is what came across. Give me 1 second. So this skull map, I was just absentmindedly kind of letting him talk about it and everything. And then you notice there in the lower left one, and the frontal is an asymmetric glyph. And that glyph has shown up around the world, in particular here in the Ohio River Valley. And that's why I honed in on it for doing this paper. So I stepped through and I measured the angles, did some trig, took what was in the frontal and then applied it to see how long this A to D measurement was, where A is the full length of the cosmic pole and D is just the difference between the two vertices. And then I compared them with other sites, in particular Eagle Mound, Alligator Mound, and then the sites in Kentucky. Now, all of those come from part 2 of my megafauna extinction paper. So I'll pull that open. And here they are. So as you can see, these are not bird tracks because they're walking single in a line. There's something moving across the sky that has been recorded.
And here is the Eagle Mound. And when you really look, the Eagle Mound is definitely not symmetric, although that's what they show when you go to the site. They have a little billboard and it shows you they had some kind of hut which was shaped in this shape for no apparent reason. But actually, I had my sons go and stand, and it is definitely not symmetric. So I used that study that I'd done, and here's the Alligator Mound, same thing. And then, of course, there was more other Kentucky sites. Okay, so I did the comparisons, and there's enough correlation to warrant a deeper study, which would require like physically measuring the skull, and also, looking at doing a real survey up at Newark. But it came to with Eagle Mound, it came to less than 1%. It was 0.91% difference in A to D ratios. Kentucky went up to 41.2%, but there was one that seemed more likely, about 19% difference. And again, it could be off because of the fact that it's basically paper recording of rock art. And the way they do that is in those days, they'd put the paper over top of the rock, and then they would shade it in. So it's not very precise in the first place. And then Alligator Mound was only 3% difference, which is pretty good.
I believe there was the archaeologists up there had developed a measurement that they called the Ohio Mile. I think it was the Ohio Mile. I'll try and find out the exact measurement. But he said this measurement of 104 feet or so correlated with another of the mounds, which was like a multiple of 4 times that, or 5 times less than it. And so he was theorizing that they were using a system of measurement that across all the systems. Now, if you could identify there is a ratio with these structures, and there is that ratio continues with the skull fragment, I think you're well onto something, like you say. That D shape.
I think it's probably based on Gobekli Tepe's age, if we were to believe them at all, these are the 4 gas giants exchanging plasma. I think is what we're looking at with the Eagle Mound. So, I think it's a very important event. Clearly, the asymmetry is very important because it's repeated around the world. And just a general asking for the audience: if you come across these asymmetric all-in shapes in your research in archaeology, etc., pass them on, because we're going to include them in a larger study of A to D ratios. The B to C in this skull does not match. The B being the left segment, C being the right segment. However, the central pole is the one that I'm most interested in, because again, if we're rotating around this structure, if we're revolving around it, it's going to change angle, and you don't know what time of year they were recording this, and that B and C ratio might change quite wildly. But the A to D ratio should be relatively the same no matter what position we were in, relatively. I'm not presuming we're perfectly orthogonal, though, and that could be a major issue.
These systems,
the alignment.
These archaeological sites and skulls and all the rest of it need to be consistently surveyed with laser precision. There's the guy walking around with a wand where he's doing the devices flipping around and doing a scatter recording of laser light needs to be done on the actual sites where these carvings are occurring. In other words, if we think there's glyphs on a rock or something like that, they should be scanned like a television set using lasers to actually determine the information that's actually been carved into the rock and get that precisely measured.
Yeah. The issue here, they hide this information from you, right? The Rock Art Kentucky book does not include GPS coordinates, so it's so easy to find.
I can understand why they don't want to put GPS coordinates in there, to protect the site. However, the surveys they do, which are taxpayer funded, the raw data should be published and made available forever. and it should be done with the precision of, millimeter, nanometer style measurings. And a lot of the stuff that's being done is very poorly executed in terms of survey.
Yes, from an engineer's perspective, these archaeologists have been basically guessing. I mean, they really don't have any precision going on. I'm glad that I'm glad that we have these records, and then I'm putting these records out for the alt-stream community. I mean, obviously, Rock Art of Kentucky that book may never be there may never be a better one, because those guys spent more than 25 years collecting these different rock art locations. There's an asymmetric. So this is Crow Hollow, Kentucky, under some boulder. And you can see that asymmetric Alwyn glyph, but it shows you that there was some extra amount of plasma on one side of the event. And look above it, there's a 5-pointed star feature. So something interesting happening.
If we have some kind of reference, like on that photograph, it's got a measurement, it's got a ruler on. We can find photometrically very accurately the shape of those objects. Probably even add something like, maybe add perspective even onto the image, and find out quite accurately what the dimensions of those grooves are,
Right. I mean, look at this one here. The Tar Springs Rock Shelter is a wealth of astronomical data about the breakdown, the interaction of the bodies afterwards. There's material that's between 4 and 5, or 4 and 5 Mars and Venus, but it's not clear. But once we take measurement data, but you can see that we were moving around this tree of life, or Alwyn shape peace sign Lagrangian arrangement thing, was not exactly stationary in the sky to us. But there was a conjunction, and that conjunction was changing shape. And so, the 3-body problem. And every time one of the larger planets, which would have been moons to these gas giants, is pulling on them, it's going to create more wobble in that 3-body. It's really quite amazing that it stayed together even, for more than 1,000 years.
Those arrows on the lower image, could they be used as sort of, we'd use arrows these days, sort of showing a direction, maybe a direction of movement of those objects?
I don't think they're arrows at all. I think that they are the same glyph moving about. I mean, you have them in one image is, let's see, the one that I really favor. Hold on a second. This one, which is the Petroglyphs at Dismal Rock. You can see that it's almost like they were tracking the motion through the sky, and then some event happened. But they have.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
As usual, they have them numbered backwards, right? It should be 1, 2. It should be number 6. Should be number 1, and then something happened. It flared, and then now you have 2 spirals. So this is probably a different tribe keeping track of the motion of the event. But who knows, right? I mean, we don't have exact information. That's why we do the studies. And these are really fantastic glyphs. Unfortunately, they're not very well protected. So we have a lot of work to do if we're going to really get all of the information about how our solar system formed, and together in a cohesive manner. But then again, it's all happening faster and faster. So that's the good news there. Now I want to go ahead.
In terms of the raw data of what actually happened in the past when these events kicked off, I think it's actually available to us. It's just we don't have the technological access to get to the data itself. If we're looking at an advanced civilization like ourselves, for example, and we were to see these solar system events, there would be a great deal of recorded information. The question is would our recording be done in such a way as it would survive the 10,000 or 12,000 years of recovery time required? And if we're talking about recording these events in data crystals, where we use atoms to record information directly, then gemstones would be the ideal place to store this data, because it's high capacity and they look like they're valuable. And in other words, they'd survive a lot much better. But I think what these sorts of images imply to me that this is what was recorded by the people who survived or were the descendants of these events. They witnessed them. They're thrown into, you know, desperate survival means, and they record this stuff as best they can with what they have in the remaining technology that's been wiped out. So I think there's two sets of records. If we could actually, get the recording from the holographic universe itself that's present, then, you know, all these debates about what happened and all our theories about, you know, people walking around in bear skins in the past and stuff, the imagery that goes with mainstream archaeology, all that stuff would disappear.
That's assuming it is holographic, but you know, the evidence is somewhat not there.
Whatever it's Akashic.
Whatever happens in the universe is,
we don't even know if the holographic and the Akashic is the same idea or not. We have some work to do in that direction.
Yeah, but I'm still saying that the universe itself, in its very construction, records what's happened. It's just we don't have the sort of access that the technology is not there present to allow us to actually view that information directly. It's like, right. Imagine the Akashic record as the universal database. We just don't have the internet and the software to go and look at that data raw and present it to ourselves. So I think it's there. It's just we don't have the means to access it.
Right. I think so too.
And it's not destructible.
I think we can access it, but it's then proving what you've accessed is actual bona fide or a figment of imagination. That's the problem. I think we can access Akashic records certainly, but then interpreting them is another matter as well. I mean, a lot of the ancient stuff we do not understand the symbolism. We're starting to break the code of it now. Because it's been found so much, but I'm sure if we fed all these shapes into a learning mechanism, it would categorize where each shape has been seen before, how close it is to another, what context it's been seen in, and just like you do image analysis. You know, you're trying to derive information from every pixel in the image and compare it with every other pixel in the image. That's what the deep learning neural network does with image analysis, and so you can very finely define all these shapes and correlate them.
But it's not just a case of looking at the detail in one image. What we need to do is compare all our images to...
Exactly, yeah.
These papers that come out are so focused on some minor microscopic view of some site that, you know, they should be required to fit this into the images that exist elsewhere. In other words, they're so focused on their particular paper that they ignore what else is out there completely. And
yeah, we've got to sort of get the data from Ohio and from Kentucky and all the other historical societies and see what, you know, if they've got stuff that they can share information-wise.
Given that it's been paid for usually by government or societies to promote knowledge to be shared, they shouldn't be allowed to lock it up in the first place. But it's worse than this. The actual archaeological community needs to, before they're allowed on a site, understand the global archaeology, what has already been documented, and it needs to be verified. Some of these sites need to be resurveyed for accuracy. Now, we can't resurvey the sites that are deliberately destroyed, which is the other issue. And then you've got sites that have been reburied because somebody's story doesn't agree with, the powers that be. There's that woman archaeologist who is wiped out in her professional field because she discovered footprints under, limestone slabs that reminds me of concrete, that were dated to 150,000 years previous. And because the dates and all the rest of it weren't in the mainstream, they just shut it down. They didn't want to hear the story. They weren't interested in the data. They weren't, they just didn't want to accept what was actually discovered.
I want to say it's even worse than that. When they pretend that they're protecting these sites, it's like the war on drugs. What they're doing is creating a black market, and they are doing it with a wink and a nod. The Smithsonian directly benefits from the so-called rarity of the objects, in that, first of all, it enhances the wealth and importance of their collection, and it encourages black market speculation. So now there's not enough people to actually protect these sites. The sites that are never under threat are the kind where, honestly, no one's interested, because it's just old stuff laying around in the dirt in Mesopotamia somewhere, or in Iran or in Greece. And it's because there's no market for that stuff that the sites remain protected. There's no main threat to them. The sites like these, there's always money out there for these rare sites, because the Smithsonian makes the information so rare, so unobtainable, and tries to keep it away from the public, and it long term doesn't protect the sites at all. So that is laying the blame at the people who deserve it. They think that they're protecting the site, but in reality, they know that they need these sites to be rare for their collections to be worth lots of money. It's really kind of heinous, in my opinion.
That's quite right, and it's numismatics. This illustrates the problem, that the more rare a coin is, the more its value, and that's one little problem. The other little problem is that history seems to be written around minted coins in Europe anyway. I know that isn't a big problem in the US, but it certainly is here, and therefore. If a coin's been minted, there has to be a king behind it lasting 20 years. So all these kings have popped up because there's a coin behind it. And, well, of course, there were 1,000 different coins minted in London in the period. I think it was 100 AD to 296 AD, 1,000 different types of coin minted. So it's just a complete confusion, really. And so if again we could put all these coins through one unified vision system to analyze them, that would sort the dates out by the features on the coins.
That's in terms of the objects, but I think they also set out to effectively dynamite the actual site.
That's all that they have.
I'm surprised that in the case of the Smithsonian, they haven't gone out with a mining team and just simply blown the crap out of whatever they don't want anybody to know about.
Well, they have in many cases. They've bulldozed the lot in many cases already.
And when you got people who want to build their mall and just simply concrete over the past, maybe that's the best way to protect these sites in the first place.
Well, they've built prisons, schools, mainly prisons, nuclear power stations. They've built all these sort of things on these sites, slap bang on the top of them. Chemical nuclear weapons built the site. They stick it right on an old site.
That's to make sure that nobody is allowed in there because of the what the site's now being used for. So it's a way of censoring the environment that we have.
That's what happened here with the Matic site over there on the Bluegrass Army Depot base. You store VX gas. Nobody wants to go near it. Plus, you make it top secret, and really just to hide the truth of these mounds that go back to that period. Now, why the United States would participate in the cover-up of Welsh kings and princes is not exactly clear to me. We have a lot of work to do in uncovering exactly the mechanism there. The only thing we've come up with so far is Thomas Jefferson was afraid of Britain claiming Kentucky because of Wales. But why would the modern U.S. government, have that issue after the War of 1812? It's not exactly clear. So,
well, it is clear because what you've got is a historical narrative of where we came from and where we are, and they're trying to implement their new global governance system, and they need that narrative to get to where they want to go. So they will suppress anything that puts at risk the narrative that gives them the authority, as it were, to rule the world the way they wish to. It's a form of divine rule.
I agree.
They say they know everything and they can claim to be able to prove it, and the last thing they want is somebody to come along with any evidence of any kind to show that the story they're trying to promulgate is complete rubbish. And one of the things they do is look at their artwork. Their artwork says what their assumptions are and the goals of their story, what they're trying to achieve in misdirecting the public in the understanding and the truth. I think they actually know the truth, and they know it in greater detail than what we've been able to get access to.
Look at this, 3,277 reads of the Great Pyramids of Kentucky since I put this up. That is really great. I had no idea that there were over 800 new views, but this is the base. This is the paper covering the topic that I was just mentioning.
Are you getting feedback there, Ramon? Are you getting any feedback?
Let's see, I got a message. No, that's me sending a message. So no, nobody's specifically written to me about it on ResearchGate. But
you need to specifically ask for feedback.
That doesn't mean that they're not noticing it. I mean, the thing is that the ratio measurements are pretty important, and they also support. By the way, they support Robert Bauval's 11,000 BC date for Orion.
Pyramid.
So, pretty. I think overall one of my favorite papers that I did. Let's see here. View full text. We'll show people a little bit before I move on to the other subject. By the way, here's an unexcavated mound. Exactly what you guys are talking about. There's a historic cemetery on top of this hexagonally shaped mound, and here's a bunch of mounds here, but this is a giant mound, very tall. Obviously, you can see the total width of the thing is 187 meters. I don't know how tall it is, but we'll never get any excavation done because there's a historic cemetery on top. But this is the broadest site. You can see they had clear rows of agriculture, dated 1100s here in Madison County, or the county next door. I went ahead and compared the alignments of Giza and Caracal. And yeah, I mean, there is definite.
No, that type of that plowed land. If you can just go up a couple of images, back up a couple of images. That type of plowed land is that's on the up another one.
The one, yeah, that.
Now that type of land exists on the moors just above my house, and it's dated around for us to about 1300, 1200 when they were they were doing and that's right on top of a hill. So they were doing it to not only drain the land. They were growing oats and barley in that. I wonder what they were growing in this.
No, we can grow just about anything here.
That's like terrace gardens that occur in the whole of the South Americas, where you've got those terrace gardens that, to make the efficient use of water flow to grow crop.
Well, this is more to get rid of water up on our, where we are, and it looks like the same as that. That's what I'm saying.
But it's also to control where the water goes. So
Yeah,
Look what
that's
we have
it.
right in the middle of the cross, of the vertical part of the cross, a asymmetric Alwyn glyph indicating that this cross is related to God, right? Because the Alwyn shape is the secret name for God, according to the Culbrin. There's the actual diameter sizes. I mean, they're pretty big. 24. This one's almost 2,500 square meters. I mean, they're pretty big. And then there's the size of the Alwyn itself. It's 23 meters by 31 meters. But they've clearly made the roads to go around the mounds.
That's for the fracking, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And here's the Google Earth of the mounds. You can see they're totally covered in trees.
So that's all going to get built on next. That's going to housing estates, etc.
It's all the little. I think that they're using the these little warehouses that you see here as storage for something. I just don't know what. But I think they're going to try and keep the top secret status. And the question is why? If they don't need it for VX gas anymore and mustard gas, etc., then why are they storing it? Keeping it the same. So I did the ratio studies. I compared, and it's definitely not Orion for the broadest site. It's Orion for Caracal and Orion for Giza, but it is Cygnus for, and we know it's Cygnus because they were nice enough to put Lyra next to it. So we see, and I step people through the process of figuring this out, and that's what this paper is all about. It's stepping you through the ratios, the processes. You can see here though the various alignments, and you can see the lowest percentage difference in the variance is for them is at this 11,000 BC for the Orion stuff for Giza and Caracal. So,
yeah, great.
Yeah. So it was a fun little paper. There's Lyra put in place with the broadest, and you can see they lengthened the lower end of the cross, and also they lengthened the upper end, but not as much as they lengthened the lower end. And bear in mind that the Alwyn glyph is right there in that neck of the cross, and they didn't include the swan part, so it's just the cross that they're interested in. Pretty interesting stuff. Again, buried history. People need to understand that these conspiracies are real. They're really happening. Okay. So I wanted to cover also this. And the reason why I wanted to cover this is because of this. This is the ongoing study that is the data ley lines that I've been following. Now, in the paper, I just put it out the other day after we did our call, and I said very specifically, so this is where it was before, that if this continues to dip down and falls below the Fibonacci updraft, then there's a serious problem with the economy. Okay, but I thought that it would at least last out till March. That is not what's happened. And I can't say to what degree that they purposely are pushing this, or if Justin Trudeau and company are just idiots. But you can see now that the Bitcoin futures have fallen below that Fibonacci line. Now, I got an E-Jane tossing today that said that if hoarfrost appears, then the icing and death is inevitable. Meaning that there is some degree of I don't know, chicanery, something in the system buggering up the crypto market enough, indicating something must be about to occur. I don't know exactly what, and I couldn't tell you, run out and buy $400 of groceries or something like that. I'm not. I
can tell you what's happening. Jeff Bezos has. The people who contributed to the Canadian truckers thing. Now Jeff Bezos owns I think is it the Washington Post or one of these anyway, and so the GoFundMe, all the details were given to some sort of I don't know, Biden's mob, and they've then rang up the donors. Many of them are British, Australian, all this lot, and threatened them to close their bank accounts and the crypto accounts and all this sort of thing.
Well, that's funny because I haven't donated, but I can tell you, if you are an officer and you come and you threaten me, you are going to be in a world of trouble. Don't come to my house and threaten me over whether or not I donate to truckers. Although I have.
Anyway, this is what they're doing, so it's going to have quite a big effect on the crypto and you know, your confidence that your data isn't your own. I mean, if Bezos is selling this data,
we see the Fibonacci's crossing with the Fibonacci spiral. And again, all these all these studies have been previously laid. You know, I've left them going the entire time. And so on the AIM call, we made a successful prediction of this reversal, and it gapped up right when we said. So now, when I wrote the other day that this upward slope is quite steep, and it should keep, they must have known that upward slope was steep and was going to keep, and then they have purposely tanked it. Because otherwise, there's no way that this should have burned through all those Fibonacci support lines that quickly.
Well, if you look at all the CEOs stepping down, again, this is what happened right before COVID.
Right, and in January in COVID too. So it happened. You're right. It happened in November of 19, and it happened again in January, February of 20.
So I mean, if you look at what, there's about to be some sort of a calamity here, some sort of a probably cyber attack. All the CEOs are stepping down. I mean, if you want to believe Klaus Schwab and his whole thing, which they've convinced the world that this is happening and we have to go with it whether we like it or not. We used to conspire and say that this stuff was all underground and it used to be an underground conspiracy. But now it's open. It's an above ground conspiracy. It's an open conspiracy.
That's right.
So, I mean, they're telling us all of their moves. All their pawns are out. Everybody has, you know, it's war games, germ games, and there's a lot of. It seems like rumors of war, and who knows? I don't know. I digress, but still, it's happening right now, and it's probably something that's right around the curb. You can almost feel it.
Well, generally, these people have an idea what's going to go down well before it does, because they tend to get the money out. I mean, if there was any way of following where Klaus Schwab puts his money, and Jeff Bezos where he invests his, presumably in himself, but where they invest their own money in these, in these times, gives you a good idea.
If you want to listen to this conspiracy statement in the '87 market crash, there's a claim that was deliberately engineered to see if they could do it, but it affected them more than they wanted it to, so they had to stop it. But the issue you got here is what's happening to these people? Are they just going to ground and disappearing out of the public eye? You know, is this being engineered? Is the direction being deliberately changed? Yes. Why? They want to collapse the economy. They want to. There's the debt structure that they have in place. They need it to just simply implode so that it no longer exists. And I've been saying within the people I talk to, locally to me, that I think that all national sovereign currencies are going to vanish, and they're going to vanish before I die. So, what we're seeing is the attempts over the last probably 50 years to deliberately crash the economic system such that sovereign currencies cease to be.
I'd agree with that, yeah. I think they'll try and level it up before they do it, so we're as poor as Africa, presumably.
Well, they're transferring the ownership of the asset in a manner that whatever the economic system they're going to replace it with cannot touch it. You just look at the way debt has exploded in governments since in the last, say, 4 years.
Oh yeah, it's doubled every year, of course, and they can't get enough. They can't get enough of it. And of course, there's always a kickback from all these government schemes they do, and that's what it's all about. Go on, retire on the Cayman Isles.
Yeah, but it's more than that. You know, the public debt that's being incurred by failing to tax and giving away breaks to the rich and overspending because of COVID and things like that. The debt has just simply exploded. I mean, if we go back to 2019 and you look at how much money was being in public debt in Australia, it's gone from about $450 billion to over $1 trillion that they're going to acknowledge. And before our current political parties were in charge of it, so we're going back with the last major election where the parties in control changed sides. When the Labor government disappeared, the debt was $70 billion. And then in 2018-19, it was like $460 billion. And now, within the space of 2 years, it's exploded to over $1 trillion.
That's right. And what they spent it on? We haven't seen any.
Well,
we haven't seen any more money.
You've got to ask. It's going somewhere, and it's almost like, well, if you want the debt, you'll just have to go to the country that owes it and take control of it. And I think what we're seeing in Canada is the steps towards that process being realised.
Let's take a look at the various stock markets here. So, it's the NASDAQ ticker. I can't remember. We can look at gold. Take on it. What is the NASDAQ? Anybody even know the London stock market ticker?
Or
the Nikkei?
Dow Jones. I don't follow the stock market.
I got the SB. Well, it's not a great tool these days because it's become decoupled from the real economy. But so on the AIM call, which was private, and I realize that people on the show don't have any reason to believe that we actually did this, but we did. We covered that there was changes happening, that this upward channel that was going on in the SPX has disappeared. And then you can see I already did some studies here, and you can see that the what was a bull flag here up until looks like January 5th has taken a reversal and is now starting to exhibit signs of flipping. Now, if we look at gold here, it has gapped up, which this is gold shares, but still it's all based on the actual commodity. Sometimes those two can become a little decoupled, but I think that there is some indicator that there is something going on. And in the paper, okay, I just said very pointedly that I thought, and I can prove that I wrote this the other day. But I said that the first thing that I would expect to go would be the housing market. So if people are already, so here it is. I'd expect the housing, if that's the case, first thing right off the bat. I think that people should seriously consider, like, if you are planning to sell your house, you might want to get it done as quickly as possible. If you're able to hold on to your house, then be ready to hold on to it for another 5-10 years easily, and it may be even longer than that. I couldn't tell you how far things will slip, but now we don't know how crypto will react exactly because of this. Because they're afraid the world's going to collapse in terms of their economy, their fiat economy, they're making attacks on the crypto economy because the crypto economy appears to be some kind of hedge. And so we don't know exactly what the future entails. We could say that with some certainty because of the data ether discussion, the Ether, is that there is some crossing happening here at this Fibonacci sequence that I've been following. And we've seen a problem in terms of fall through in the account. Now, if I pull open a live, let's see here, what could we use?
I thought the banks. I thought the banks own the majority of the Bitcoin shares now.
Well, at this point, it's possible that they do. It's not exactly clear how much is owned by the little guy anymore.
Well, the question I've got is, are they going to seize the entire crypto market? All of them. All
they
the
might.
crypto.
They very well might.
That's what everybody's talking about, the central bank digital currencies. You know, it just seems like that would be the common direction for it to go, right?
Yeah, it seems that they'll want to use any excuse that they possibly can. Obviously, Justin Trudeau, I mean, I think he is scared of the truckers because he's a gigantic, you know what. But I think that really it's all just an excuse to take control because of currency wars, because of China and Russia. So it all goes back to my book, which leads me to my advertisement. Okay. I will pull it up while you guys make your final comments on
the
this.
observation here is that if you're going to look for a global currency of the New World Order, you don't want anybody else's currency available. So the first step is to obliterate any currency whatsoever. So you get rid of sovereign currencies of printed money and minted coins. You get rid of the independent Bitcoin environment. You just wipe out everything else except the currency system you want to have everybody use, and that is what I think is driving this show. And they're going to either seize it totally or panic everybody to it.
Right. So before I close out the recording of this, I just want to put out a advertisement here. My book came out yesterday. This is the hardcover. There's another link for the soft cover. If people are interested in these topics, including there are some memesical discussion. There's going to be a separate mems book. But if you're interested in the mems discussion as far as like war and government and also looking at looking at strategy, the book is now available. And I hope that you enjoy it. Guys, I have no idea exactly what's going to happen. I know that we've been talking about the etheric tsunami coming, and I've been telling people February, March. I am concerned. It is the largest one. You know what the universe sent me the other day, yesterday? It said, hey, look at this rogue wave. This is the largest rogue wave that's ever been measured. Did you see about this rogue wave? I was like, okay, thanks for letting me know. Rogue waves, if people don't know, are different than tsunamis, but they are just as devastating. This particular rogue wave was not the tallest ever, but it was the widest ever. It had a massive volume, and it was over 58 feet tall. These events, they come out of nowhere. I remember one year we had a rogue wind come through, and it was definitely something about it. It had to have been electrical or something. It came across the entirety of Kentucky, went up through Ohio, et cetera. Probably Buddy remembers that event. And it wasn't like a microburst level. It was pretty fast. Like the wind was moving about 40 miles an hour. It caused some damage. It wasn't a huge issue, but it was just the strangest feeling. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. I've not been through a dust storm, but I know that dust storms are different than this. And I just thought, how odd that these kinds of waves just ripple across the planet. And then maybe there is some analogous thing happening in the ether. And maybe, again, if that's happening in the ether, maybe it would spread into a data ether. Especially if the power numbers and the force are so well connected through the ether, based on the big G diagram. So we don't know exactly what's happening. I would definitely recommend to folks that they go to if they go to the gateway, because we're all about free stuff around here. Everybody likes free. If you go to the gateway and then you go to the directory, you go to the EPEMC, there is a guide to Bitcoin, but there's also below that a resiliency and survival guide. There are a couple of like tools that people can use. Sustainable protection of the family. That's one that probably never gets talked about, honestly. Hey. And it's got checklists, things to go through. Just make sure your family is safe. Make sure you're safe. Here's a free table you can fill out. Make sure that you've got enough of these various things. And if people notice that anything's missing, be sure to let me know. I also would love to have a volunteer come along who wants to write the section on canning and jarring, and then I could update this file. So if anybody wants to write a section about canning and jarring, let me know. And yeah, I think we'll final thoughts. We'll wrap up this recording, and we'll head out, make like a baby and head out. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. No, not
Just
on that regard. Buddy, I'd like to say I enjoyed the artwork for the pending show. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the advertisement for the great exhibition, the Great Chicago Exhibition of 19.
Let's pull that up. That's a good thing. Thank you for bringing that back up. He actually sent it to me directly. So let's see here. Boom, there it is. Look at that. It does look, it's very classic. I was like, where did he find this old thing? And I looked, I was like, oh snap, that is a new thing.
Yeah, maybe we could do with a couple of airships flying around, or maybe drones or something. I don't know what.
There's an updated one with different. Here, let me send it to the group. But yeah, this is the old feeling that I felt like Tesla versus Edison.
There we go. What's that? Very nice. I'll be there.
Yeah, that's just a screenshot off of my computer. Now, it's really interesting that building actually does do the inverse square law as it cascades out. I put the Doherty set right at the top of the beam. Who knows where that building is in the world? I don't even know what it is. But I was just looking for old Tartarian architecture and things like that.
It looks Asian.
Yeah, but it could be near Asian.
Yeah,
Right? It could be from Asia Minor or like you said, it could be Far Eastern Europe.
I don't want to quote politicians, but I'm just saying we just need to remain prepared and calm. You know, not to knee-jerk reaction to the environment around us. You know, just.
That's right. Don't run out and attack your local governor. Call your governor. Call your politicians. Tell them what you know, let them know that this is not going to stand. But be very careful about running out and doing anything impulsive. Here in Kentucky, we had this guy that got incited to hate people by the MSNBC. 2 years later, goes and tries to assassinate in Louisville, just 70 miles from me, tries to assassinate a mayoral candidate.
Oh, I've just seen that. Yeah, it was a Black Lives Matter. He was saying, It was an anti-guns man, wasn't he?
Yeah, but apparently he attacked another Democrat. So these people are really quite susceptible to things that irritate and anger them, and they lose their sense of who they are, where they are, like what are we doing, what are we about.
Well, he shot his mate a few times, but missed apparently.
Just be prepared for a couple of sequenced tornadoes. You know, just assume that you're going to get 3 tornadoes in a row and have the stocks that you need to get over that period of disruption. But I suspect that something else is much more major going to happen. So
it's probably going to be nonlinear. It could be a black swan event. We'll see. I mean, like the Chinese said, may live in interesting times. Hope we'll catch the program I did with Rex last night, and I will try and find I don't know if he's posted that to YouTube yet. I think it was on his channel live, and then I don't know. I think he has edited out some things because he actually ended up wanting to go into some subjects. So, but I'll try and get that information out, and I'll definitely post a link to. Who was it I said I was going to post a link to? Somebody's channel. Good Lord. I'll have to go back and review what we've talked about. Guys, I'm going to say adieu. I'm going to hit the stop record.